Right, here we are at the bottom, very bottom of page 1. We split this into 3 videos, so 2.2, page 1c here. And we have an example here that involves fractions. So again, make sure you're solid in those. 3/4 times y, or 3/4 times y equals 15. By the way, just as a little note here, if it ever starts with 3y/4, that's exactly the same thing. Okay? And some of you, it might be easier to kind of think of it as that way. It's the same as 3y/4. Why is that? Because when you have 3/4 times y, it's really the same as 3/4 times y/1, and then you could multiply those fractions. 3 times y on the top over 4 times 1 on the bottom, 3y/4. Okay? So let me make sure I stayed in screen there. Good. And make sure it didn't go out of focus. Okay. I have a very sensitive camera apparently when we try to record. So I'm actually going to do the 3y over, well, let me think. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this one as 3y/4. You don't have to do it this way. You could actually treat this as a fraction and say, well, it's being multiplied by 3/4, therefore I'm going to undo that by dividing both sides by 3/4, which means you'd multiply by the reciprocal. Maybe I'll do this 2 ways. I think that's what I'll do. I'll do it one way on the front side, I'll flip the page over and do it another way so you can see it different ways. So the first way we're going to do this is with the fractions. With the fractions as is. I just thought of a third way we could do this. Okay, so here we go. We'll talk that through during the second one. So here we go with the steps. The first thing we do is we look to simplify. Is there any parentheses involved? And no, there's not. Those are all taken care of. Are there any like terms that we need to combine? If you look on the right side, it's just 15. On the left side, the equal sign, there's no like terms to combine. That's already been done for us. Pick a side is the variable on one side or the other, and it is already on the left side. It's not on both sides. So again, that's been done for us. So now we start to ask what's happening to y. And in this case, if you plugged in a number for y, what you'd be doing is you'd be multiplying by 3/4. So this is a one step in the sense that you will multiply by the fraction 3/4. So this is one way to do this problem. We will do it a different way. We'll flip the page over and do it a second way, and you can go with whatever makes the most sense to you. Or a timeline version, you'd say, hey, y times 3/4, and we would read that left to right here. Then we're going to undo those, what's happening to y. We go in reverse order, so that means we're going to go up this list one step, not much to change there, but we do change to the opposite operation. On the timeline, you go right to left. We're going to run into that times 3/4 first, so we change that to its opposite, divide by 3/4. And now what we've done is we're telling ourselves exactly what to do. So we're going to divide both sides by 3/4. Well, when you divide both sides by 3/4, that's really the same as multiplying both sides by 4/3 because we do the inverse. So that's what we're going to do here first. We're going to take 4/3 times both sides of the equation. And that is 3/4 y, and that is 15. I'm sorry for the small print here. I'll get it up a little bit so I can have room to write. So the 4/3 cancels the 3/4 because you've got 4 and 4 on top, 3 and 3 on the bottom. That was the whole intent. The intent is to get rid of the 3/4, so we did the opposite. And when you divide by a fraction, you really multiply by the inverse. So that's why it works that way. And so on the left, you just get y. And then over here, 4/3 times 15, think of the 15 as 15/1. Now 3 is going to 15 5 times, 4 times 5 is 20, over 1 times 1 on the bottom, so y is just going to equal 20. And then you want to check that. We check it back in the original equation, so 3/4 times our answer, does that equal 15? So we're checking 20 as our answer here. And indeed, 3/4 of 20, imagine 20 as 20/1. 4 goes into 20 5 times, and then 3 times 5 on the top is 15, 1 times 1 on the bottom is 1, so we do get 15 equals 15. That's a true statement, so our answer checks, trying not to run into the rest of my workspace on the right side here, and then we can put our answer in a solution set, the little braces, and 20. Okay, now I'm going to flip this page over and adjust the camera angle so I have a little bit more space, and then we'll try this a different way. Okay, then we'll come back for the try problem. Oh, I guess I have plenty of space here, so if I start right about here. Okay, here is another way to do that example, and it is from page 122, number 18. Okay, and this was the watch example from the previous side of the notes here. It starts as 3/4 times y equals 15, but I could rewrite that as 3y over 4 equals 15. And again, why can I rewrite it? Why is that possible? And why we want to do it, you'll see as we go through it. You'll see what changes about how the solving is. You don't have to deal with the fractions anymore. But why can I rewrite it? Well, the reason why I can rewrite it is because when I say 3 over 4 times y, what I'm really saying is 3 over 4 times y over 1, and then when I multiply top times top and bottom times bottom, I get 3 times y over 4 times 1, which is just 3y over 4. So I'm going to go ahead and now solve it when it looks like this. So now I'm going to take 3y over 4 equals 15 and go through the same checklist. First, are there any parentheses that need to be taken care of both sides? No. Are there any like terms? No. We looked at that at the front page here. Whoops, helps if I actually write what I'm saying. Like terms. Is y on one side? We got to pick a side, and it is. Okay, y is on one side. It's not on both sides of the equal sign. And don't be alarmed. That's going to be, well, not alarmed, but don't be surprised that most of the problems are going to have all this done for you. But it's good to rehearse the checklist. That way you're ready when that stuff comes up. You're already rehearsing how to deal with it. Okay, valuable skill to practice the steps while the problems are easy. Now we ask ourselves what's happening to y. Okay, so if we were to plug a number into y, order of operations would dictate that we would take care of the groupings first, and this fraction bar divides it into two groups here. So we would take care of the 3 times y first, then we'd turn around and divide by 4. So there's now two things that are happening to the y. First of all, it's getting multiplied by 3, and then the second thing that happens is it would be divided by 4. Or if you wanted to write that in more of a visual timeline, you would put y here, and the first thing that would happen is you'd multiply it by 3, then it would get divided by 4. And now we're going to undo that list or the timeline of what's happening to y. So we have to reverse the order of what happened. So we go up the list, we make step number 2 the first step and step number 1 the second step. So now we're going up, step 1, step 2. We make every operation opposite, so now division becomes multiplication, multiplication becomes division. You would do the same thing with the timeline. You wrote the timeline to read left to right. We're going to reverse that order now and go right to left and take it as it comes. So opposite of divide is times by 4, opposite of times is divide by 3. And when you use the timeline to solve, you always want to go right to left. So this tells you exactly what to do now. There's no question, there's no wondering. What do I do first? How do I deal with it? Is it a fraction? Is it not? We've set it up that you don't even have to worry about that. The steps now tell you, I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. You come to the right, from the right to left across the timeline. Times 4 times 4. So in this case, I'm going to write the whole thing as times 4. Bring down that original here. And the 4's are going to cancel because it's like multiplying by 4 over 1. I'm left with just 3y on the left side, and 4 times 15 on the right side is 60. So I've taken care of the first step, the times 4 and the multiplying by 4 here on the list. And depending on which method you want to use, just continue up that list, step 2, dividing, or continue right to left along the timeline. And again, it says to divide by 3. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So y is equal to 60 divided by 3 is 20. Because the division undoes the multiplication, or you could think of it as 3 over 3 cancels, because 3 goes into 3 one time each. You just 1 times y over 1, or just y. Okay, we're back to our equation. We checked it earlier. In the other problem, 20 is the same answer we got, so we can just go to writing our answer. So that's another way to do it. And notice also what we ended up doing in that first step really eliminated the fractions. So that was a third way I mentioned you could do it, is when you see the fraction, you could just start by eliminating. See, there's one denominator, 4. I could multiply both sides of the equation, every term, by 4. When you multiply the left side by 4, you end up with the 3y. When you multiply the right side by 4, you end up with the 60. So I'm going to put it in quotes here. Eliminating the fractions, that method would get you right to this step, 3y equals 60. So lots of ways to think about problems, and I want you to gain confidence in a way that makes sense to you and gets you consistent right answers. Okay, I'm going to flip it back over here, and it's your turn to try the problem here on the bottom right corner, number 20. Hit pause and then come back for the answer. Okay, and you should end up with a negative 32, and we'll go through this one in class. All right, we'll see you on page 2. You're doing great.